When you first start Blender, you're going to see this here. And this is the factory settings. This is how it starts off. You've got a camera over here, you've got a light source up here, and you've got a cube in the middle. We don't actually need this, so we're going to push the A key to deselect everything, and then the A key again to select everything. It's like a toggle. If you're in object mode, it will select all the objects. If you're in edit mode, it will select everything that you've got in that particular edit. So we want to select everything and then push X. That's going to delete everything. Blender is really important that you learn shortcut keys because the menus are not very intuitive. So if you learn the shortcut keys, it's going to be a lot quicker for you in the long run. So from here, we can go File and then Save Startup File and Save Startup File. This little red and white circle with the lines through it, looks like a targeting reticle, is your 3D cursor. Whenever you create an object, it's going to be created at that particular point in space. Generally, with the simple modeling that we're going to be doing, we want it right in the center. So we want it right in the center here, and you'll want to click Shift S and cursor to center, just in case it's not in the center. So that'll put it in the center. From here, we want to start modifying our layout a little bit. Some of the stuff we do need, some of the stuff we don't need, and just familiarize yourself with it. This panel down here on the right hand side, we're going to use quite a bit. It contains all the different stuff or things that are in our particular scene, and we'll be able to use it to apply modifiers and other things to our models later on. On the left hand side, we've got all the tools that we're going to use. These tools are relevant to object mode, but if I go into edit mode, I don't have anything to edit at the moment, but if I go into edit mode, those things will change. Over here on the right, if I push the N key or click this little plus button and bring it out, I've got tools for the particular tool that I'm working with. So if I go to, if I had an object selected, it would show some other options there. Currently it's showing something for the grease pencil, but I'm not using that tool. So N will hide and show that. T will show and hide this. You may find that after you start to learn the shortcut keys, you don't want that there anymore. So you can just hit T to hide it. Down the bottom, we've got our animation timeline, which we don't need. So we're going to grab this one and drag it downwards so that we get rid of that. So this down the bottom here is a little toolbar that we are going to use quite a lot. And it's got object mode and some other pivot points, which we'll get to shortly. So let's just start working with some of the tools and having a look at how things work in Blender. So far we've looked at A will select and deselect all. X will delete the selected things, and you'll have to confirm that. It won't just delete. You've got to hit X and then click the button. T will show the tools panel, and N will show the properties panel. I'm going to hide the properties panel until I need it. We're going to add in a mesh, a plane, not a plane, a cube. Okay, so we're going to be doing mesh modeling. There's lots of other different types of modeling. NURBS modeling is more accurate, but for game development, it's too high detailed. So we're only going to work with meshes, and we're going to click on mesh and then cube. It's going to add a cube to the center of our 3D cursor. So from here, I can hit A and select and deselect everything. If I hit B, I can draw a border around things. That's a different type of selection. So B will let me border select stuff. So if I hit A, hit B, it only has to touch it and it will select it. C is another type of selection, which I can use middle mouse button to deselect and left mouse button to select. Okay, so middle mouse button select, left mouse button to deselect. Control will let you do a lasso select. And we've got the middle mouse button or the scroll wheel, scroll in and out. Middle mouse button click and rotate. So hold it to rotate. And then shift, middle mouse button will drag. Now it's important that you push it in that order. If you push middle mouse button and then shift, it still rotates. So it's shift and then middle mouse button, that will pan it and scan it. You can change the views as well by pushing the number pad keys. 1 will give you a front view, 3 will give you a side view, and 7 will give you a top view. You can reverse those by pushing. You can get the other views as well. So 1, 3, 7 are front, right, and top. And if you hold down Control and push 1, 3, 7, and this is only the number pad, by the way, it won't work with the numbers along the top, you will get the back. And I can't push it at the moment because my recording software takes Control 1 as something else. So that will give you the back view, Control 1. Control 3 will give you the left view, and Control 7 will give you the bottom view. You can also rotate these views with the 2, 4, 6, and 8 keys. So you can get kind of exact views there that you're after. And 5 will switch it between perspective and orthogonal. Orthogonal has no perspective, of course, but it is helpful for seeing whether things are parallel or not. 5 gives you a more realistic representation of the object with perspective on it as well. Okay, so I'm back to here. And there's a lot of other keys that we're going to need to familiarize ourselves with. So what I'm going to do is flick into edit mode now. And the best way to go into edit mode is to hit tab. Okay, you can click down the bottom here, but you'll find that you speed up quite a bit when just hitting tab. In fact, a lot of shortcut keys, you're going to find it a lot easier to hit tab. When you go in there, everything will be selected and you'll probably be in vertex mode. To switch between these different modes, you can push Control Tab, and then that will bring up this here, or you can just click down the bottom. Now, vertex mode will allow you to select these vertices. So if I hit C or B, so B will let me draw a box, or even just right click on a vertice. You can right click and hold down Shift and select multiple vertices. Okay, it will identify the vertice you've selected with orange. It also kind of puts a little gradient out there so it's a bit easier to see. Hold Shift and I've got 2 vertices selected here. Edge selection is just like that. It will select an entire edge. And then face selection selects the entire face. Each of these selection modes has different purposes and you'll find yourself wanting to use all of them at different times. So important to remember: vertice, edge, and face. If you select vertices in one mode and then switch to another, they won't be selected. However, if you select a face in that mode and then switch to face mode, it does stay selected. So just be aware of that. If I click that and then select edge mode, those edges are still selected. And same if I switch to vertice, those vertices are still selected. But if I just select one vertice and switch to edge mode, nothing selected. Alright, so I've got this object here. It's a cube. And I'm just going to put it into face mode to work with. I'm going to select this face here. And I'm going to hit the G key to grab it. G is the shortcut for translate. So G kind of stands for grab, but translate, grab, they all mean move. So in 3D modeling, translate is another word for move. I hit G and I can move that around. Now it's going to be really tricky to move this in 3D, which is why you can lock it to a particular axis. If I want to lock it to the Y axis, which is the green one, I can just hit Y. Now I can just move it along that Y axis. If I want to lock it to the Z axis, I can do that. And the X axis, I can do that. The S key will scale, and there's the scale button up there. S key will scale. And just be careful where your mouse is. You don't want to have it at the center of the face when you push S, or it'll make it really sensitive. Just keep it somewhere off to the side. That way you'll notice that it's pushing in and out from where my mouse was. So I can scale that just along the X axis, along the Z axis, or along the Y axis, which doesn't do anything in this case. And lastly, I've got rotate, which is R. Once again, along the Y, along the Z, along the X. And you want to be careful not to turn the geometry inside out like that, because a few odd things happen. Now before, you may have seen me do this. These faces here, if they ever show up like black in the shaded view or purple, it means that the normals are inside out. You have to be careful of this, because if we put it into a game, the game renderer looks for the normals and only renders the normals that are facing outwards. The normal is a mathematical term related to vectors. It doesn't mean anything to do with normal or unnormal. It's a mathematical term relating to vectors that refers to the direction that the face is looking or pointing. So currently, all of these, if we were to look at their normals, they would be pointing inside the cube. And from a renderer's perspective, these sides here would be invisible. So we've got to make sure that they're this light grey colour here. There are other ways to check the normals that we'll look at later on before we export different things. When you're scaling stuff, if I hit, or grabbing, and then move it along that y-axis, I can also move it a certain amount. I can move it 1 unit, 2 units, etc. In this case, I've got 121 units. So if I move 2 units, it's there, 3, and you can see down the bottom, right down, it's kind of hard to move my mouse down there, but where my mouse is here in the bottom left, I can type something in, so 2, and that'll move 2 along the y-axis. Hit enter to lock that in. If I then want to grab it and move it along the z-axis, 2, I can hit enter and move that 2 along the z-axis. I can then scale it, and I'm going to scale it into a point like that. Maybe I scale it in 1, oops, -1, which has turned it inside out, -0.2. Okay, hit enter, and so I've got this odd little shape here. So we can start making shapes. You can see it's going to get quite difficult to make a lot of the more complex shapes, so that's why we're going to start out fairly straightforward. Okay, so what we've done is we have looked at the translate, rotate, and scale tool. We've locked it to the X, Y, Z axes. You can also do it this way here, but you're not going to get that exact measurement. You can grab it and hit a number, and it will move it to that far as well. Next, we're going to look at doing some basic modeling in the next video. So just some basic modeling with a cube. You might want to go File, New, reload the startup file, and add in a mesh cube. So we can start doing some very basic modeling with this cube here.